Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we'll take a look at some new malicious compliance content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
First one is entitled Customer wants to show his son the freezer he incorrectly installed. Gets sued by the owner due to malicious compliance. So this happened a few years ago, so is not exact. I was listening to a story on YouTube that reminded me of this customer. I worked at a burger joint back then. I was working through college at the time. This restaurant was brand new and the building was only finished being built 6 months ago. From day one there were electrical problems with the walk-in freezer. This one is the size of most living rooms. Once we even had to throw out all the meat and clothes for a week for repairs and to replace the stock. Kinda bad for a burger joint to only serve salad, you know. Most of the time I was the bar keep, but sometimes the waiters needed help. This was a day I was helping them as the bar was slow. I see a customer in his 40s, whom I will call Ken from here on out, and his son who was maybe 10 years old. I take their orders and at first everything is normal. I go get their drinks and put the order in. I come back and he asks me if he could go in back with his son because he wanted to show off the custom freezer that he installed with his company. He even bragged about needing a crane to lift it into the place. I told Ken no. It was not only a health code violation but also a huge safety issue. He got absolutely angry. He argued that he knew that kitchen better than anyone there. He himself wired the freezer and his company installed it. Son was looking embarrassed. He even asked his dad to stop and he didn't need to see it. Ken berated the kid, asking if he was proud of his dad and the restaurant equipment, electric company he owned. I told him I would go ask the manager just to make him happy. I wasn't going to ask. I knew the answer. I went to the back for about 2 minutes and ran a load of dishes for the dish guy while I waited on Ken and son's food. The food came out and I took it to them, and told Ken the manager said no. Most people would be okay with that. He demanded to speak to the manager himself. Cue malicious compliance. Little did Ken know that I had overheard my manager, who also was the owner, saying he was going to sue the company that installed the freezer, but he was having trouble finding out who the owner was so he could have the lawyer address the letter to him. My boss had lost thousands of dollars because of the freezer being incorrectly installed. It passed building and the initial health inspections because the wiring issue was not visible and it held temperature on the inspection day. Oh, was boss happy when I told him the owner of that freezer installation company was right outside eating a burger. He and I walked out and I introduced Ken as the owner of the company that installed the freezer. Manger put on a big customer service smile. The kind that secretly says screw you. He says he is so happy with the new restaurant, but he needed the owner's card in case there was an issue with the brand new freezer. Ken happily gives manager his personal card with his personal cell and email. Boss smiles with a real one this time and says thank you. Now my lawyer will be in contact with you soon for the incorrectly installed freezer. Ken just has a mouth hanging open. Before he can say anything, Manger tells him he had 2 new electricians look at it because no one at his office would help him, so he knows it was the freezer and he knows it was his shitty job that caused him thousands in monetary loss. He also adds that if he attempts to leave without paying he will be arrested because now the manager has his name and phone number. Manager, owner did sue and won close to $50,000 in damages. Edit. There were permits for the install. It was just all under his office name and various employees with the office phone number given. Manager, owner did try calling them first but always got the run around. Next one is titled, Clearly this is the perfect time to get to know the new neighbors. About 2 years after my family moved to a smallish university town in a southwestern state of the US, the acreage around our house was sold to developers. The building noise was awful a lot of the time, but we met some great people, the workmen on the various phases, not the real estate developers. Once the first part of the development was finished enough to have neighbors living in them, the house sort of next to, behind our house sold. The new owners were veterinarians. He taught at the university and she had just opened up a practice near our house. They had dogs, who apparently were not allowed into the house after dark. One of the poor dogs was an elderly spaniel who was blind and she would get lost out in the yard. My parents' bedroom is closest to these neighbors' house. The city has an ordinance about barking dogs, letting your dogs bark all night, etc. And these neighbors also had a brand new HOA that specifically had fines starting at the how many times the dog barked in an hour. Who was assigned to count the barks, I never did find out. But these vets let their dogs bark for hours. We asked them nicely to make it stop. Other neighbors would go and ask them to make the dogs stop barking, but they just wouldn't. The HOA got onto them. Didn't seem to change anything. Even having the cops stop by and give them a ticket for letting the dogs bark for hours every night didn't stop them. Mrs. Veterinarian told a cop and some neighbors gathered around that her dogs were angels and were not the ones barking. She would be kept up all night if her dogs were out in the yard barking all night. Clearly it must be someone else's dogs and her poor babies were being picked on. So a few nights later my mom asked me to make a big batch of muffins. She set up the coffee maker and made up a tray that had everything needed to go have coffee and muffins with the new neighbors. That night when the dogs started barking, Mom got up to work on some grating. About 2 a.m., Mom started the coffee and poured it into a thermal carafe. She made sure to make the tray look very pretty. Then she carried that tray all the way around to the veterinarian neighbor's house. She knocked on the door and rang the bell until they answered. Then just as sweet as pie she said it seemed like the perfect time to really get to know them since clearly no one in either their house or ours could sleep through their dogs barking all night. After that, their dogs didn't bother us at night. They made sure of it. In the long run, they turned into very nice neighbors, thankfully. Next one is titled, Need Another Doctor's Note? No problem. This story happened to my mother, she has given me permission to post it. My 23 male mother, 51 female, is a paralegal at a pretty big law firm. Each attorney has several paralegals under them, and one of them is the manager of the rest. If one paralegal is out, the manager takes up their work as well as their own. My mom had the same manager for several years and never once had any issues. This year OG manager retired, and back in May her new manager was brought in from another section. To say this new manager, we will call her Nancy Mancy, was a witch would be an understatement. Nancy immediately changed almost every single policy and micromanaged every single task. She constantly had sly remarks and would tattletale every single slip up to the attorney. This got so bad. The attorney actually told the entire section he doesn't want to hear about any more workplace drama or small slip-ups at all. Now that the stage is set, on to the build-up. My mom found out she had a small tumor on her ovary that needed to be checked and removed. Biopsy was taken and found out it's not cancerous and can be removed with little to no issue. The doctor told her it would be a one-day recovery. She went to Nancy and asked for the 2 days off. No problem, just bring a doctor's note. My mom got the doctor's note and turned it in without issue. 3 days prior to the actual operation, they do her pre-op and find out that it can't be removed as easily and she has to have a partial hysterectomy. Now her doctor says it's going to be about 2 weeks bed rest. Mom informs Nancy. Nancy is upset and says she needs another doctor's note. No problem. My mom calls her doctor's office and they use a program to edit the existing one to say 2 weeks, instead of 2 days. They fax it to my mom and she gives it to Nancy. Now, the program medical facilities use to edit these types of documents is also used by paralegals. Nancy sees this note and immediately accuses my mom of editing the document herself just to get more time off. She then demands to have the doctor's office number. My mom calls them and explains the situation. The nurse talks to Nancy and agrees to get a new note made. Here is the MC. Nancy demands my mom go in and get the original, and not a faxed copy. Nancy states, "We need the original since this whole situation has been shady. We are gonna do this by the books." My mom goes to the doctor's office, clearly upset. When she gets there, the nurse tells her she is entitled to 8 weeks of state short-term disability. She immediately fills out all the paperwork and takes it to her local disability office. Because of the short time frame, it's pushed through. The next day she returns to work with her note for 2 weeks off and her 8 weeks disability paperwork. Nancy is upset. My mom just says, "You wanted this done by the book. This is what the book says I get." Now Nancy had to do 10 weeks of extra work, just because she gave my mom a hard time about doing 2 weeks of extra work. Since my mom has been back, Nancy has given her no problems at all. Edit. As requested, just a little info on my mom. She is in great health now. This took place in May of this year. She made a full recovery. I said she had to have a partial hysterectomy in the post but left out how this was the second one. So technically she's at a full now. She's strong and very patient. Next one is titled, The Office is for Staff Only. This one if going back a few years to 2014. I was working on a construction job as a pipe welder building an LNG plant for a company that is currently building nuclear reactors for the US Navy, and the way this company had itself set up was with two distinct classes of employee. The craft employees are the ones that actually do the work. Everyone from a laborer to a machine operators, pipefitters, welders and as will become important later, the leading hands are all in this category. Staff are the salaried employees, supervisors, engineers, welding inspectors, section superintendents etc. Our crew worked great for a few months, until our supervisor got a better offer elsewhere one day and quit, leaving our leading hand to try and manage the crew of 80 on his own. Getting another supervisor anytime soon wasn't going to happen, and we all got on really well, so we just did what we could to keep things going. One of the jobs the supervisor would normally do is pull up all of the drawings we needed. The drawings tell us the exact shape, specification and location of each pipe has to go, and with a crew as big as ours we might need 50 to 100 drawings each day. The thing is, the supervisor had access to the company intranet system with a company laptop and a printer. Us lowly craft employees didn't have that. What we did have is access to the literal library of physical drawing folders in the main office, and me, who had spent years in old power stations going through old physical drawings and knew how to manually search through millions of pages to get the exact drawings we needed. So that became my job. For the first week or so without a supervisor, my leading hand would give me a list of drawings to pick out and photocopy, and I'd get that done. It would take me 2 to 3 hours of a morning and then I'd get onto my usual duties welding crap, until the section piping manager saw me in his office one day. "Who are you?" I'm Toki. "You're not staff. You're one of our welders. The office is for staff only. Go back to your section." "You got it, boss." So I did, and on my way there I told my leading hand that the office was for staff only as well. You see, my leading hand was very quick and he caught on immediately. So he called up the piping section manager and confirmed that the office was off limits to the craft employees, which included my leading hand. We both knew we were at least 5 weeks out from getting a new supervisor, so neither of us went into the office to get drawings. Our entire crew of 80-odd people, all of which were making $3,500 plus per week before tax, did zero productive work for the next 7 weeks, because the office is for staff only. Edit to clarify a point. It seems quite a few people have misread the post and think this was some government contract and that millions of taxpayer dollars were wasted. While this company does build reactors for the US Navy, I included that detail as anyone with a bit of Google foo could figure out what company in a few seconds. This job was a quoted fixed-price contract in the private sector, and took place in another country, not the US. Last one is titled, Fine, I'll wear the lab coat. I work in a biolab. Working with cells and whatnot, won't give away more details. I have about 3 years of experience, and of the 2 labs where I work right now, one of them has anally strict rules while the other is rather relaxed. There's also a technician here whose only job it seems is to see if I'm wearing a lab coat. Honestly feels like that. I don't interact with them much other than that. The kicker here is that the lab coats are only supposed to be worn inside the designated rooms. You cannot wear them in common areas or anywhere outside the lab. If you do, the lab coats need to be washed and cleaned, and other than that it can become an administrative hassle. I respect laboratory rules, but sometimes it's a bit too much. So this day happened not too long ago. I'm in the lab just checking if the microscope computer is on so I can fetch some data. Checked. It was on, so then I was, okay, let's get the hard disk. I was definitely not wearing the lab coat at this point. As I'm leaving the lab, this technician like a magical gnome jumps out of nowhere and starts questioning me as to why I'm not wearing a lab coat. Before I can even say a word, they go off on a whole new tirade about the rules and whatnot. QMC. All I asked was, "You sure you want me to wear a lab coat?" Response, "Yes, don't make me repeat myself." So, being a nice obedient person, I put on the lab coat, exit the lab and start walking to my office. 2 seconds haven't passed and I hear absolute shrieking from behind me about what I'm doing. I looked back and informed them, "Hey, I'm just following your instructions." They soon got my boss involved, who could only laugh and basically asked me not pull smartass moves anymore, and the technician is now officially off my back. It helps that they had to get the lab coat washed and cleaned and return it to me. Edit. To all saying that I'd be out if pulled this crap in their labs or offices, my boss has a sense of humor. He saw what I did and just laughed. I don't disrespect the rules, but hey, if I'm in a microscopy room for 5 seconds where there are no cancer cell or virus samples, wearing the lab coat. To everyone hating on the technician, don't do that. I don't know anything about that person other than their freak ability to spot me not wearing a lab coat. Thanks for listening.